So that's, and that's, you know, that's a whole school issue, all right? One of the things that I've seen a lot of in your schools is sort of low-level disruption. And of course, what's interesting about low-level disruption is this is the thing that really is so innovating in terms of teacher stress and so on. But of course, low-level disruption is not, you know, is difficult to be subject to in terms of behavior policies, but is dealt with very much by consistent staff behavior, all right, and a consistent approach to sort of active instruction inside the classroom. So, you know, a lot of behavior is not just about behavioral policies, but about how we actually get a consistent approach to teaching inside the school, and that is you know, that is really what's happening here. In this one here, is that the school really sort of puts a lot of emphasis on a high degree of consistency. So if you're trying to actually, you know, turn around a school in the early days, you're finding a lot of low-level disruption, then begin to actually sort of use the good practice in the school to generate a series of guidelines about, you know, the approach that everyone uses to deal with those presenting issues inside the school. And that becomes the basis then of a more sophisticated approach to pedagogy. And the cultural shift is that one there. You don't achieve that on day one, but the cultural shift is to, you know, a very high degree of commitment to the work ethic in the school. So the immediate actions in these schools are, you know, dealing with behavior, also dealing with sort of low-level disruption in terms of a consistent staff response. And then the second one is the quality of teaching and learning. In these schools, that they put a lot of emphasis and do a lot of time on the monitoring of teaching quality. These schools are very clear about what they mean by good practice. You know, a number of the schools have established, you know, in Robert Clack's school, the one I was just been talking about, you know, what is the Robert Clack good lesson, right? And the characteristics of the good lesson are spread around the school. Everyone knows what they are. And then, you know, again, part of the leadership work here is ring-fencing time for staff to work in teams to engage in productive discussions about pedagogy. So the answer to the question about sort of teacher reluctance to engage in this is based around, in these schools, a principle of reciprocity, really. That, you know, we will give you time, right, but you will meet together collaboratively to talk about it, right? You can't expect people to engage in collaborative work without you actually providing the time and the incentives. So the quid pro quo has to go on here, and that's, you know, one of the first steps, I think, in establishing this sort of shift in culture. So this is what those 12 schools did under those two issues. The question is, what are you doing? So can you discuss that on your tables? Begin to write something down. Give yourself a mark out of 3. And then we'll just take a little bit of debate as we move on to the other issues in a few minutes' time. Data, use of data, pervasive use of data in schools, really sort of quite intense tracking of students and then support for those slipping behind, and then highly developed approaches to assessment for learning. Those seem to be the characteristics in the schools that we've been looking at. What are they in yours? I'm sorry, I changed this order. I'm sorry about that. So it's sort of 8 and 9. It's sort of, what are they? You're looking at 6 and 7 to look at now. Yeah. Okay. 5 minutes on that, and then we'll just finish up with the last 2, and then break for coffee. No, I'll come back to 5 at the end. I reordered them. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't reorder that. Okay, we're coming to the end of this now. I'd like you now to just take the last couple, which is inclusion and treating students as individuals. I think there are a couple of things here which seem to be pretty important, at least in the schools that I'm familiar with. One is the sort of the notion, the phrase that we're using now is student voice, but is the student's voice heard in the school? Are the student's views heard? And this is manifest in a wide variety of ways. I think I was talking to someone yesterday who actually increasingly involving students in appointing staff and in appointing principals, but also just sort of really embracing the student perspective in a whole variety of aspects of school life. A strong commitment to the individual needs of youngsters. This relates back to the issue to do with tracking, but really making certain that underachieving students receive specific support and having mechanisms and systems for doing that.